An eye surgeon in Bowling Green, Kentucky. It's about an hour north of Nashville.
Let's say perhaps you were to run and then win, and you enter the den of thieves with the rest of the politicians. Would you be able to hold true to your beliefs and the Constitution and your oath the way your father has?
I think so. I think what's important is that I wouldn't be trying to win an election just to be in politics. I'm very happy with my career as it is. I have an entirely other life. In fact, my wife would prefer that I not run for office. So, I think that it is. You need people with principle, and it's sometimes hard to determine who those people are in advance. But I think a lot of the people that have been in politics their whole life, and that is their whole career, you can tell that it's more important to them to win than it is to believe in anything. And I truly think a man of principle could make a difference. For example, if you had someone in the U.S. Senate like my father, when it came time to one of the most important votes that any congressman will ever have, which is war, you would have had someone stand up in the U.S. Senate and say, look, we don't go to war without a formal declaration of war. Yeah. And there's a very good chance, if we would have had a formal vote on declaration of war with Iraq, there never would have been a war with Iraq.
Go ahead and take this word.
All right, I think I'm going to stand up on something. I've been short my whole life. I'm going to try to stand on something to be taller. Ayn Rand, who many of you may know, came out with Who is John Galt? Well, I'd like to say, who are we to question the need for a central bank? Some would say, that's un-American. Some would say, that's ill-advised. Some would say, that's extreme. Well, if they do, I would ask, what do you say to Thomas Jefferson, who opposed the first central bank? What do you say to James Madison, who opposed the first central bank? Or what do you say to Andrew Jackson, who opposed the second bank and killed the second bank? Andrew Jackson famously said, I do not believe that the national debt is a national necessity or a national blessing, but rather a curse upon the republic, inasmuch as it is calculated to raise around the administration a moneyed aristocracy dangerous to liberty. Andrew Jackson understood that the Federal Reserve is equivalent to having a national debt. They're two parts of the same question. You can't have a large national debt without having a Federal Reserve. If you want to get rid of the Federal Reserve, you have to believe in making the deficit smaller. We would have to have a vastly smaller national debt, and that's why many of us would like to get rid of the Federal Reserve. I don't oppose the Federal Reserve because it is secretive, though it is. I don't oppose the Federal Reserve because it lacks congressional restraint, although it does. I don't oppose the Federal Reserve because it's a private cartel, though it is. I oppose the Federal Reserve primarily because it wreaks havoc on the economy. Right. We need to understand, and this is the most important probably question of the last 30 or 40 years, what caused the panic of 2008? Was it capitalism or was it the Federal Reserve?
Federal Reserve! Federal Reserve!
Most economists have decided and would agree that price controls are bad. All you have to do is look at the Soviet Union and see what happens when you try to fix the price of bread. They had no bread or they had too much bread. They had food lines and they had rationing. But if you ask economists, should we have a Federal Reserve, most of them still don't get it. But what is happening and what is the price of money? Interest rates are basically the price of money. So it's the same as setting the price of bread. When you set the price of money, you inevitably will make bad decisions. And that's what happened over the period of time between 2002 and 2008. After the dot-com crisis, they decided they would lower the interest rates to zero. Interest rates are a barometer within the economy, and when the economy gets overheated, they naturally will rise. But as the economy became overheated after 2002, as you approach 2004, 5, and 6, you've got an alarming bubble in the housing market. This did not happen as a consequence of capitalism. And this is not an academic debate, this is an important debate, because whoever wins this debate will decide the history and the future of this country. In the 1930s, they had this debate, and we had this debate through the 1940s and 50s, but who won the debate? The big government people won the debate, and they said that the American Depression was caused by capitalism. Consequently, we got more and more intervention into the marketplace, and more a slow ebb and flow towards socialism. Now it's not a slow ebb and flow, it's a quick ebb and flow as we nationalize the banks and are purchasing equity in banks. And believe it or not, they're not even letting the banks get rid of the government money. They won't let the banks pay back the government money. Because it's about control. Now that they have equity in the banks, we're losing control of private institutions. When you control the interest rates, you control the lifeblood of the economy. When you make them too low for too long, the boom got created. People say, oh, it was stupidity or it was greed. Well, one man's greed is another man's profit. When it's my money, you might look at it as greed. When it's your money, you look at it as your profit. Profit has always been with us. Profit is the invisible hand that Adam Smith talked about. Profit is what drives the efficient distribution of goods in a society. Profit is good. What we had happen was not stupidity. It was not some new vice that man has not always had, such as excessive self-interest or greed. What happened is you had mortgage brokers that would loan money to people with no money down, not because they thought there was going to be a failure, because the price of housing was going like this. The median price of houses had gone up for 60 years from the Great Depression forward. But when you got to 2002, the median price of homes went like this. And as it skyrocketed exponentially, you could buy a house for $100,000 with no money down, because a year later it was worth $120,000. Then they'd loan you back $20,000 and you put a pool in the backyard. It was a crazy system, but it was based on the home prices rising. The home prices were rising exponentially because the interest rate was below what the market would have set it. We need to lay the blame where the blame should go. The Federal Reserve caused the bubble and caused the panic. I think there's great progress being made. Most of you have seen on the internet, we now have 91 co-sponsors for the Federal Transparency Act, H.R. 1207. A practical thing you can do if your local congressmen have not signed on to 1207, bug them, write them letters, call them on the phone. This is something that really has a chance of passing. Barney Frank has announced that it will get a hearing sometime this year in committee. Whether or not it passes is unknown, but it will get a hearing. It has an interesting coalition of both true conservatives and some people from the left who think that the Federal Reserve is unaccountable and more at the will of Wall Street, which may also have some truth to it. But the bottom line is there's a coalition of left and right coming together here that believes that the Federal Reserve needs to have more scrutiny. It's not the ultimate end the Fed bill that we'd like, but it's getting there. And it has a chance of passing. So do what you can to get more co-sponsors for us. It will come up for a vote, and it is something that I think you can influence your congressman on. I'd like to close by saying, can you repeat after me? End the Fed.
End the Fed! 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 End the Fed!
Is there room for people at your event this evening? mean, would you like to extend the invitation, or?
I'm not sure if I can. There's food that's been reserved. I think you can
yeah,
come,
so
but I don't know
would
if
you
they
like
can
me to
add you
come
on
down
the
to
food,
eat,
and I'm not sure if you folks say, I'm not sure. Anybody here?
Jeremy, my understanding is if people are willing to pay $15, it's hear Dr. Paul at 7:30. They'll try to make room. The room is sold out for dinner.
Well, I had...
What's the location?
The location is at DFW in Chaska. It's near the intersection of Old 12 and 41. DFW, 7:30, $15 to hear Dr. Paul.
I got a question about the End the Fed bill. I haven't, I should be ashamed of myself, I haven't researched it much yet. Your father obviously wrote it. What is the name of the committee that he chairs that oversees the Fed, technically oversees?
Well, I don't think he chairs it unless there's a subcommittee, and he wouldn't chair it now because the Democrats are in charge. But the Financial Services Committee is the one I believe that Barney Frank does, or it's the whole banking committee. I'm not sure which one. But it will go through one of the banking committees, and I'm not sure which one.
Can you speak to...
No, I wasn't. I had to work.
Can you speak to the efficiency of the bill were it to be passed, when it's passed, in how well it would do its job in auditing the Fed?
But I think it would provide a lot of things, you know, quicker realization of reports. Occasionally they do give you some information now, but there's a delay in time. But they also aren't even telling you which banks got money. So hundreds of millions of our dollars are being passed around to banks. They won't even tell you which bank got the money. And their argument is, well, if we tell you which got the money, then you'll sell your stock. But bottom line is most of
I think this is a great idea, but I think it's just,
there are some
the whole system is so
allies
hard
on
on
this.
there's no way possible for there to be any kind of
growing at the rate it's growing, because when I first heard about it, it was 26, and then it was 40s, 70s, 90s.
But it'll be just like what...
I predict the summer.
Well,